Hello and welcome to Summer's Almost
Summer
Fun Club.
Club.
Alicia and I are going to be trying our darndest to have an awesome fun club today. We were both just sharing uh, some we have had some experiences this weekend, so we are excited to be here with you now and having fun. And today we're going to be talking about interactive-ish notebooks. And Alicia, do you want to start out just talking about what is the thought behind this?
Yeah. And I'm going to go over that more in the presentation, specifically what an interactive-ish notebook is,
Mhm.
why I decided to use it. But basically, it's a collector for everything because I don't do well with binders, and I find that my middle school kids don't do well with binders. When I taught lower school or elementary school, they didn't do well with binders, and notebooks really work for me. So I figured out how to use this idea of interactive notebooks and kind of mold it to fit what I do in my Somos classroom. So
Awesome. And
I
that's
hope you guys enjoy it.
And that's a big question that people always have is, how do I keep all the things organized or, help my students stay organized during the year. So this is an extra special Summer Fun Club because as you may or may not be aware, the first teachers, pay teachers, back to school site-wide sale of the summer is happening today and tomorrow. So it's up to 25% off everything on the site. Everything in our store is 25% off. It's marked down 20%. And then at checkout, you put in a coupon code to get the additional 5%. And so during this Almost Summer Fun Club, Alicia has set a timer and I have set a timer. And when those timers go off, the first person that comments after the timer goes off will win a $10 gift card to Teachers Pay Teachers that you can use during the sale. And during the sale, it'll be like getting you a value of like $12.50 because of the percent off. It's so exciting.
Yay. So we're excited you're here. Let's go ahead and get
Yes.
started. This is a dense presentation. Normally I do it in a full hour with questions. If you watched me at NTTRS or you watched Comprehensible Online, it's the same stuff. So if you want to bow out, I get totally am okay with that. Okay.
but, not okay with
but
that.
you could win a thing, and that would be awesome. Okay, so first, you can watch the video that I normally show of my kids actually using the notebook at this link, bit.ly/interactive-ish notebooks. All the handouts that I referred to, there are some specific Somos ones, there's some general ones, all the pages that I have, you can go find and you can read a lot more about how I do this on my blog. So let's move on. First of all, today, I hope that you learn why I call them interactive-ish. I hope that you learn how I use them, like what specific pieces go into them, what logistics are necessary, how I set them up for success, and then fairly painless assessment. As you guys know, I don't like to spend much time doing things that don't help my students acquire, and assessing the notebooks is one of them. So, interactive-ish notebooks are composition books used to collect all classwork, all readings, all quizzes, all songs, everything gets glued in. They are not this. Go ahead. And this is no offense to the teachers who use these products. This is just to differentiate what I do and what a traditional language class interactive notebook is, which is like flip books of specific vocabulary. Those are great, but those don't have a place in my input-focused classroom. If that's what you do, no judgment at all. I'm just offering you a different view. Okay?
Yeah.
Next. Do you want to say anything?
I think it is important to establish, like, when someone says interactive notebook, these are the things that they're really talking about. And so what we're talking about today is a version of this, but it's going to be quite different. So it's great if you use the ones pictured here, and the ones we're talking about are different.
And so let me show you what an interactive-ish notebook is. So first, I think we might have skipped a slide. Oh, maybe not. So why notebooks in the first place? Because my kids are disorganized. I bet your kids are too. And they're constantly losing pieces of paper and they're constantly going, I don't have page, whatever. Well, they can't do that if it's glued in. They might not have the notebook, which is a separate issue, but I'll talk about how I deal with that. Go on. So why I call them interactive-ish is because I use both sides for input. In a traditional interactive notebook setup in a science class or a history class, you might use one side for information and then students interact with it on the other side. They take notes, they draw comics, there's all of those sorts of things, but that's output. And it's usually output at a form that my students can't handle. So for me, I just use both sides for input, and also input.
Yeah, so input. There's got to be a way that we can combine those words.
Right, interactive input notebook.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like it. Interactive input notebook. So again, they're input based. I don't use them for note taking. Okay, my students do very little writing of copying things down in these. They might do an activity in them, but they're not taking notes, which is key.
I'm glad you said that because that's another question that comes up a lot in the group. Teachers ask, do you have your students write down the words or write down the stories and things? And I never did. I did have them write down the core vocabulary for the unit on the dictionary page, just so that there was a record of that their parents and admin could look at. Those were the words that were going to be used on all of the assessments moving forward. Not that students were held responsible for knowing them, but those were the words that were going to be included.
Exactly.
And but other than that, I had no required note taking. So.
And that's all I have my kids do is they write down their core vocabulary. Okay, so what goes in them? Everything. Anything that I do in class, except timed free writes. So that means stories, songs, cultural readings, discussion questions, because I like them to read the questions. It's more input. And also, and sorry, that slide is all messed up. Can you read that, Martina?
Also,
something happened.
Sorry, my internet is wonky. So quizzes to be signed by parents, unit objectives, class routines and procedures, passwords, word count graphs from free writes.
So literally everything that happens in my classroom is contained in the notebook. Let's look at I think I have some examples even. Go on. So my goal in keeping the notebooks is to keep everything in one place and give students who want to read or study at home texts that I know are 100% comprehensible. And the way I know it is because we don't glue anything in unless we've gone over it in class. I don't say, okay, put this on page 12 and we're going to go look at it, go read it tonight for homework, unless we read it together. And that's really important. All right, next. So this is just a tweak in an elementary classroom. Lisa Horvath is an immensely talented English teacher in Hungary who teaches English as a learned language. And what she does in elementary school is she uses TPRS stories like you find in Somos, and then she types them up and she has the kid glue them in a notebook and then illustrate them. Then the kids keep those notebooks year to year to year. So even if they're pre-literate, the kindergarten story becomes the first grade reading activity, and so on. Isn't that a cool? I love that modification. And her notebooks are just absolutely lovely, and they're very simple. So let's look at some examples. These are from the Somos curriculum exclusively. They're boys and girls, not just my highest female achievers. You can download these screenshots for a closer look because I realize it's very small.
So the link.
Yep. So this on the, let's see, as you're looking at it on the right side is the reading quiz from Unit 12. The left side are the answers. So I have the kids glue the reading in. They read it. They respond on the answer sheet,
Oh.
and then they hand me the answer sheet. I can grade it and then hand it back. This is particularly important for me because I have to send tests home to be signed. So that's part of the school expectation. They can't lose this little slip of paper unless they lose the whole notebook, which they generally don't. I see that there's a question about table of contents and all of that. I'm going to come to that in a little bit. So let me show you some examples and then I'll go through how I set it up. Thank you. The next one, so these are two song activities, one from Unit 10 on the left and one from Unit 15 on the right. And they're just, one of them is, there's a reading and then the lyrics. One of them is the lyrics plus kind of a higher order thinking inference activity that I just love from Unit 15. So those are how I use the songs. I just glue them in and we basically follow the directions. Next. And then the class stories. So I do Story Ask. On the right, you'll see an example of the close style where I remove the core vocabulary from the story, and then I hand the kids a copy of it, and they have to figure out what words go where. It's a light formative reading assessment. It gets them to read it again, and it's awesome. I don't always do that, though. So on the left, you'll see another example of just, I typed out the story. I put the core vocabulary in bold. Very simple.
Oh, and this is a great plug for when you create class stories with your own classes, please do add them to the collab drive, put them in the loading zone, and Elicia will get them filed in the right units, and then we will have tons and tons, there already are a lot, but we'll have tons and tons of class stories that you guys can access to use to give to your students from other classes around the world that they can read as well. And that also reminds me that for Unit 1, I just updated the Spanish unit this last week, and I will be updating the French, excuse me, with a story asking, with a like a teacher script to help you know how to actually ask the story. So there's the normal story script, but then there's also, I guess, like a guide for what kinds of questions to ask. That'll help you as you're asking your first story.
Awesome. I'm excited to download that. I haven't seen it. Okay, here are some of the et ceteras that go in my notebook. I do use unit objectives. You can find those in the unit overviews, or you can email me from mine, because I made mine before we ever had the unit overviews. The students basically have a list of the unit objectives. And then usually after we do the campanada, students do the campanada, and then I ask them, do you feel like you can meet the objective, whatever the objective is? I don't do that every day. I do it about once a week. It's a very easy way to meet those administrative requirements that don't necessarily help kids acquire, but I do think it's good to give them a little roadmap. This is what I want you to be able to do at the end of the unit. I want you to be able to recognize and understand the vocabulary as best you can. That doesn't mean that they need to have it memorized. Next. Oh, we had a discussion about low frequency words like colors, numbers, days of the week, months.
Awesome.
The way I teach them is I literally glue them in the back of the notebook, and then students have it. They can look at it, and they're there for them. They're references. Kids use it, but that way, when it comes up in class, I use it naturally. If they want to use those words, they're there. I also give the kids a personal dictionary page, which is something called the ABCs of it all. And you can just Google that, and image Google, or Teachers Pay Teachers. It's an ELL strategy, and it's fantastic. I use it in my graduate class also. And students put the words that are important to them there. And so they start creating their personal dictionary, and it's organized by letters, so it's easier to find. This is really great if you teach sort of academically oriented, high anxiety kids, this is a really successful strategy that I've found to meet their needs without sort of opening it up for them to take a lot of notes.
That's awesome.
Someone
asked if they can take their notebooks home. Do you ever run into students cheating by sharing the quizzes with friends and siblings?
So we addressed that a little bit with in our assessment video. I don't. I've never had that problem because I don't mark answers as right or wrong when I assess. So I just mark their overall proficiency on a rubric, so they don't know. I mean, I guess somebody who got an advance could share their answers, but I'm fortunate to work in a school where we don't have a huge amount of trouble with that. And if I do see a kid whose reading proficiency assessment is much higher than what I'm guessing it is, then I'll probably have a conversation about that.
Mm-hmm. I think that it was never a problem for me either. And I've thought about that a little bit and why that would be. And I think part of it is, actually, Elicia, I think you do announce your assessments, right?
No, I don't. They're always unannounced.
Okay, yeah, me neither. So my announcements were never announced. So that contributes to students not like trying to figure out answers for them. But also they're not difficult. You know, we discussed this in the summative assessment, in the assessment one as well, that a summative assessment is intended to be proof that students have learned what you thought they learned. And so you're giving students a text that you think they'll be able to understand. And if you don't think they'll be able to understand it, you don't give them the assessment. You wait until you think they are ready. So I don't think that my students ever felt stressed out enough by an assessment because it wasn't a challenge. And they're also not the kind of assessments that you can memorize answers for. I mean, I suppose you could, I suppose you could memorize some sentences and things, but I just didn't see that happening. So.
And I have to say that I also really try to frame the conversations in my classroom about proficiency. And I feel like starting that from day one, we don't talk about grades. We talk about what you can do with the language, how much you can understand, and later how much you can produce and how much I can understand when you do produce it. That really framing it through the lens of proficiency has really helped change the conversation in my classroom from grades and points. So also, most of my assessments are 5 questions, tops, maybe 7 if I'm feeling wild. And I have some resources on my blog I can post later about how I introduce the levels of proficiency and what that looks like in my classroom if you're interested. Let's move on, etc. Okay, word count graphs. I do timed free writes about every week, not because they help students acquire, but because they help students see their growth. And they complain and they complain, and then by the end of the year, they're like, did you read my timed free write? My story was so great. I don't read all of them. I do read them if they say they were great. And my goal next year is actually to try to incorporate more student writing into my daily lessons. So I'll be writing blog posts about that at some point.
First person to comment gets a $10 gift card to TBT.
Kathy Stelzer. Is that who you see?
I
see the names. Kathy Stelzer, you win a $10 gift card.
Awesome. All right, Kathy. Congratulations. Okay, we'll have one more giveaway. Okay, so about free writes. I did free writes and graphed them my first year when I switched over to TPRS, and I could not keep up with it because at my school we were required to read everything that our students wrote. And so that just with, I had 175 students reading 175 pieces of writing every week, especially when they were writing so much, was just very impossible to stay on top of. So I love the free write graphs. And like Elicia said, my students loved seeing their growth and they felt really proud about it. But I did not keep up with that.
All right, next you can see, I do have them write down their passwords every week or every couple weeks. And you can download that form as well. There's a place for date.
Are
Again?
passwords are?
Oh, passwords are a secret phrase that students, I tell them what it is, they write it down, and they also write down the English meaning. And every day I stand at my door and I ask them for the password. What is the password, or what is the secret phrase? And they whisper it to me. If they forget, they can just look. It's just a way for me to look at them and say hello. And it is also a great way for me to pre-teach them some rejoinders and some common language.
And there's a lot of resources. Alina Filipescu started using that strategy, and then Bryce Hedstrom has really expanded on some materials. He's published a book about it. So if you want to learn more about how to use that in class, you can look up Alina's blog, which is TPRS per Chinese. If you Google Ignite Chinese, you'll come up with, you'll find at least Alina's blog. She's a Spanish teacher, but she blogs with some Chinese teachers. And then Bryce Hedstrom has a book called What's the Password? And more.
I'm just typing that up.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe. Alina Filipescu. Yes, I know how to spell Alina's name. I'm really proud of myself. It's been a long time. Okay, the next piece, I do have them write down the target structures or the core vocabulary. It's three words usually, or three phrases in Spanish and 3 in English. That's it.
Easy peasy.
And then this is the key. Almost every loose paper gets glued in. That's why I do it. This is a notebook of a student who was not the most academic, but he was able to, with support, keep all of his papers in one place, and then he had them, and he was a lot more successful about that, you know, in my class. Someone
asked what glue you use.
Oh, I'm going to talk about that. Hold on, because it's really, really important. Okay, so this is all about the logistics, and everything is on the handouts. This is based on, I've used interactive notebooks from 1st grade to 8th grade. So these are the things that I've learned over the years to do. Number 1, composition books. I use composition books, and yes, their covers do fall off. It's not the end of the world. I use them because they stack better and because spirals come undone by the end of the year. And my students use these notebooks. They are beat up. They are working notebooks. And I'm okay with that.
Have you ever duct taped the covers at the beginning of the year?
I don't do that because some kids don't need it. The kids who do, they come in and I'm like, hey, it's duct tape day. Here you go. And they do that instead of the starter because, you know, some kids just need that. Okay, so second, I explicitly how to teach glue. And you can download this little form. So first of all, I use Elmer's glue, always, 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 because if you use glue stick glue, yes, it's very easy and it's very not messy. However, by October, everything will be falling out. It doesn't last unless you get the really expensive archival glue, and who has the money for that? I tell the kids 5 small dots of liquid glue is enough. Glue stick glue is not permissible. More than 5 dots results in messy work and a grade reduction. I tell them that. I don't really reduce their grade, but I tell them I do. Dot, dot, they came up with a rhyme. It was like, dot, 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 don't use a lot, or something. It was super cute. So I also have really major consequences for gluing anything other than what they're supposed to. So if they glue self or others, which they do, you know, they lose the glue for the day. If they do it twice, they lose it for the week. I support them by giving them paper clips instead, and then they have to come into office hours and we make a plan about how they have to use glue better. It seems really silly, but I guarantee that being serious about it and clear about my expectations allow me to do this. Yeah, just a dot, not a lot. Thank you for that. Do they glue in class for each paper? They do. If you watch the video, you'll see how quickly it goes. which is linked on that bit.ly link. Okay, so here are my procedures. I have procedures for all of this. Passing out papers, how they get glue at the beginning of class, when they use scissors, how they get them, how they find information, where they write the page numbers, all kinds of things. So you may have heard me say this before, but when you decide a procedure, I recommend that you practice, practice, practice. You incentivize the practice, and you practice it again. Don't accept anything other than exactly what you want from them, and practice it. And I do believe that with the support, they will step up. I will talk about how I handle students who lose their notebooks. So here are a sample of some of my procedures. Kids get the glue at the beginning of class. I use one of those shoe holders, and the glue goes in upside down. It's so easy.
You are so brilliant.
It works so well. And then if the students don't turn it upside down, it's like self-managing the consequences. They just do it. Like, and somebody comes around and is like, somebody forgot to close it.
Yeah,
and
that totally becomes one of those annoying things. Like, these aren't all going the same way.
Exactly. So it just handles itself. It's great. And kids, that's the first thing they do after they give me the password. They go get their materials every day. I do supply everything because I even have left-handed scissors for the lefties in a special place.
You just found out this morning, I think Elsie, my youngest, is left-handed.
Awesome. Get lefty scissors. They make a huge difference.
Okay.
Next. Okay, so as far as handouts, this is a major time saver. Pre-cut them. Don't let the kids cut them unless there's a really good reason to let them cut them. This is time that I spend as part of my planning time. When I go to copy room, I plan to make the copies and I plan on cutting them. And that's super important because any time spent cutting is time spent off task. So I do give them scissors, we use them, but I don't, I try to do as much cutting as possible. And when I do want them to cut, I model it like you would not believe, because that does take more time. I teach them, go ahead, where to look for page numbers in my room. And this is really important. So I have 3 little mini whiteboards that I have set up, and those are for all of the levels that I teach. And I teach my standard 1B kids to look here and my faster paced honors 2 kids to look there. And go ahead and go to the next one and you'll see a close-up. So these are just IKEA picture frames. They're like $2.99. I have one for each level, and you really can just use them for mini whiteboards. So as you can see, I can put 4 pages, and it gives the kids a really clear visual of where to look to glue.
That's awesome.
Super easy. Because visual, I'm super dyslexic. So you can use less paper. You can use recycled paper printed on one side because they're gluing the bad side. They're gluing it in anyway. So you can ask your colleagues to save all of their one-sided mess ups. I just have a box by every copier, and when they're full, somebody usually sends me a text and I go get all of the blank paper and I reuse that. I also use half.
Yeah, how to load it properly in the printer the first time.
Yes, and that's definitely. I also have little sticky notes on every copier of how to do it that I just tape on, and everybody's cool with it. I work in a small school, so I see questions. Let me finish this bit, and then I will answer your questions. Okay. You can use the print chew up function or the multi-shot function. And if you do that, these half-size pages fit perfectly on a regular composition notebook page. Unless you have IEPs for vision impairment, you can do this. If you do have IEPs, make sure you know your kids. I wouldn't do this for kids who are visually impaired because it is small. Mm-hmm. I can read it. Kids have young eyes, they can generally do it.
And a lot of times these readings, the printed versions, are things that you've already read together in class, projected on a board, and so it's kind of a second go through anyway. So that might also influence which ones you decide to print halvesies.
Absolutely. Next one. So ask Google how to do it on your device. I know how to do it on my device, but you can ask Google how to do it. Google knows everything, and save paper. Some people have said that this curriculum seems to have a lot of printouts. It can or it can't. It's totally up to you. I use almost no unused paper in my class all year, and it's awesome, except for the notebooks. Okay, next. Oh, something else you can do is you can double side stuff, cut it in half, and have them glue flippies, which is really helpful.
More interactive.
Yes, absolutely. And in Spanish, I have decided, I know this isn't right, guys, it's el flippy. And the kids just know, oh, we need a flippy? Yes, we need a flippy. And it becomes a funny joke. And yeah, I know that's not right Spanish. It is a good in-joke and community building. So before we go to absent kids, I want to answer some of these questions. So I'm just going to scroll up. Sorry.
All right.
My computer's super slow.
They said, what about page numbers?
Okay, so, ooh, I suddenly lost you. What about page numbers? So I use page numbers. I want everything. If I want the readings from Unit 4 to go on page 27, everybody needs to glue it on page 27. So when we
the same class has page numbers that they write on the notebook so that it becomes kind of like textbook. And you could say, turn to page 27 in your interactive notebook, and everybody would turn back to whatever you had taped or glued on that.
Exactly. That's a big one for me because we do go back and use them all the time. How many years do they use their books? I give them a new one every year because they're used. Some kids, I only have my kids at most for 2 years, and some kids do save them from 7th to 8th grade. A lot of kids save them from 8th to 9th grade. I have a lot of alumni come back and tell me that they use them all the time because they have so much information in them. Mm-hmm. So
do you provide, I know you said you provide all the supplies, but to clarify, do you provide the notebooks for your students too?
I do. And the reason for that is because there's so much variation in notebooks, notebook pages, page numbers, all of that, that I want to know that every book has 100 pages, which works out to 200, and that there's uniformity. That's just, I don't pay for textbooks, so I have that in my budget.
You can usually get them very cheap around school supply time. I mean, I think that you could, I used to get sales for like 25 cents per notebook. And that was something that my school always provided for all teachers. If I wanted them, I was able to get a class set of composition books for each one of my classes. I don't know why that was their rule, but it was.
Yeah, that's always been, that was an ask for my first week, and I love it. Do kids, so is it just a good way to organize something? Do kids go back and use them? They use them all the time. So for those who want to read more or get more input at home, they use them. For those who, I mean, often I'll be like, you know, day 1, I'll ask a story. Day 2, I'll have them glue in the story and we'll do something with it, and then something else. Day 3, we'll go back and do something else with that story. It's already in there. Or I'll say, you know, hey, I want to take a closer look at this thing that we touched on, but now we're going to go deeper, go back to page 32. So we'll, you know, that's how I use them. And I really, we open them up every day, I would say. So am I one-to-one? I'm not, and I don't want to be, because I don't want my kids on any more screen time. That's a personal decision, and it's a little bit of a school philosophy, is that if we cannot have kids on the screen, then we choose not to unless there's a really compelling educational reason for it. What else? Do I make a book alongside the students? You know what? I don't. I just look up at, I just write it on the board that I demonstrated a couple slides back. And then I do keep a running list. I can show you an example of what that looks like here. And it is exactly, it becomes their personalized, customized textbook with everything that we've done in class, which is why I love it. Let's see.
Wow.
All right.
We can go to the next slide.
Yeah, I think we're ready to talk about absent kids. So in our mindset, Summer Fun Club, we talked about going deep rather than going broad, right? Because if you park on these three core vocabulary pieces and you spend a week, it doesn't matter if a kid misses a day. If you're just going through content and content and content, it's really hard to get caught up. But because we spiral so much in the Somos curriculum, it's a lot easier. That being said, I do have a records keeper who keeps track of the papers. They also kind of bullet point the main event. So the bullet point might be, we read, we talked about the story, we played a game. Like, it's very general. That's actually for me because I forget really easily from day to day what we did. Papers get put in a folder for each class. Absent students come and meet with me very quickly during office hours to make sure that they've got everything in their notebook. It's pretty self-sustaining and it's easy. You can read more about it on my blog about how I do it, and there's a form available for you to download.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So just a quick review of logistics. I use composition books. I use liquid glue. I teach procedures, everything from where to get the material, how to store it, and how to use it. I teach them how to cut and glue explicitly. I teach them where to look for information. I teach them how to get and store their materials. So I teach, that includes passing papers out, how to store their glue, all of that. I pre-cut everything. I use recycled paper and the multi-shot or the 2-up function. And I have a procedure for absent kids. Everything is covered under the handout at that link.
That I thought of, Elicia, for the question about students losing things, and I didn't use interactive notebooks or interactive notebook-ish notebooks. I didn't actually require my students to have anything. I had a folder in class that students could keep things in if they wanted, but I also would always tell my students, if I gave them a paper that I wanted them to keep and be able to reference later, I always let them keep that in my class. So it sounds like, unless you have an expectation that students have to be looking at this at home for anything, you might consider having a place in your classroom where students can keep their interactive notebooks, and then it never needs to leave the classroom, and it'll be there for them when you want to use it in class.
Absolutely, and that's what I do for grades 1 through 6. When I've taught those other ones, they don't leave the classroom because that's it is a pain. I'm going to talk about how I deal with it because it's not the end of the world, it turns out. So as far as planning, this is very Somos specific. So this is for you guys. I'm excited to get to do this part because I usually don't. When I plan, I very specifically plan out what goes on what page. And I have a very particular structure that I use. I always have, and that's old because now we call it core vocabulary, but I always have target structures on the right side and then the song activity on the left. I always have the unit of objectives right after target structures, and then I always have the class story. I always have another story and the movie talk reading because for units 1 through 10, there's a reading for every movie talk that I've created a few years ago, and so on and so forth. Oh, hey, that our alarm for our next winner. And
comment. Who's gonna get it?
You can't see the name. The most recent comment I have is Joanne Dinsmore.
Woo! Okay, Joanne. Oh, and Joanne and Kathy, to get your gift card, email info@comprehensiveclassroom.com right away, and we'll send you those gift cards so that you can use them before the sale's up. So Kathy won the first one. Joanne, you just won the second one. And congrats.
Yay. So this is a page from my unit planner. You can download this page. It's literally just a grid with a to-do list of what I need to create. I really like this, and I find this to be the really nice graphic organizer for me in what goes. And I do have a fairly extensive blog post about how I lesson plan. That ties very deeply into this piece of paper. So I can put up the link to that again here in a bit. Next. Okay, so this is how I set up. Should we pause for questions here?
Oh yeah, sure. Let's see. All right, looks like we have a couple suggestions. Staples and Walmart both have them for 50 cents each. Some people print out packets that they can send out to, to their print shops. Yeah, some schools have those, and that's awesome. Yes, this will be available later. Okay, we can just keep going.
Awesome. All right, so this is what I actually do, and I have several notebooks with me, but since you guys can't really see this, I did my best to take some pictures. So on the inside front cover, I have some kind of getting to know you activity. I have them do it in L1 usually, depending on the level. I have different ones for Spanish 1, the Spanish 2, and so on. But it's just a way for them to personalize their notebooks and a way for me to kind of get to know who they are and what's important to them. The first 3 pages are the table of contents. And that's super important because I do expect them to keep their table of contents up to date so they can find things. And then I have my class procedure, and then I have my notebook procedures. So how to use glue, how I grade it, the rubric, and that sort of thing. You can download all of that on my link. This is my big tip as far as grading them. Put items that you're going to look at each time you collect the notebook, either in the front or the back. For me, I want to check their table of contents to make sure they have everything, and I want to look at their word count graph. I don't keep track of it. They're keeping track of it, but that way I can just kind of see very quickly. I can look at the front page, I can look at the last page, and it goes very fast. Next, on my last pages, I have the word count graph. So it's kind of like business, it's the business department is what I call it. I have them glue in their passwords. I have their low frequency words, and I have the writing fluency graph. I also have stuff that just doesn't fit anywhere else. Last year I started doing birthday compliments. So I have a list of all the birthday compliments, and those are glued in at the back as well because they're more like a reference page. So this is how I actually introduce the notebook. I use a slideshow. I adapted it from one that I bought on Teachers Pay Teachers, so I cannot share it to respect copyright. But this is what it looks like, and I have all the information, because the information's all mine, on the handout. I tell the kids how I'm going to grade it. I grade them randomly. I don't really grade them randomly, but I tell them I grade them randomly. They're worth 50 points. Every page is worth some points, and they have to make up any missed pages. Super easy. On the cover, I give them these very, very specific directions. Using a Sharpie, they have to write their name clearly, and they write their personal number. I give every kid a number. It makes alphabetizing a dream, and it helps if I need things to be anonymous, it allows me to do that as well. And then I write their class, so I know which class they're in. So if a random notebook comes back to me, and notebooks often come back to me, I know where it should go. I also tell them that they can decorate the covers as long as they're school appropriate. I can read their name and class and number, and no glitter. The glitter is not for me, it's for our maintenance staff, because I love our maintenance staff and I want them to love me back.
Also, I'm hearing that glitter is actually very bad for the environment, and I never thought about that. So
yeah, it's a real problem for me, unfortunately, because I really like glitter. But then I walk the kids through page by page. This page is inside front cover. I've found that I have to really make that explicit. This page is your first page. Number the pages in the outside upper corner. And then I have them number the first 15 so they get the idea. Again, it's really explicitly teaching the procedures, giving them a chance to practice it, and then reinforcing it. It does take some time, and I'm okay with that. Then I have
that it's worth taking time to do.
It is so worth taking the time to set it up. And yes, I do this in English at all levels. This is important because they don't speak enough Spanish yet for me to do it in the target language, and it wouldn't be a good use of time. So I do grade them on the table of contents. I call it el índice. Every 2 pages gets 1 line on 1 title. This is just my preference to save pages. Super easy. And we start writing the first pages together as a model. I usually start this day 2, because the first day we just kind of play games and we start a very simple story. The second day we get our notebooks. Next, talking about how I grade them again, because I teach fairly academically oriented kids and they really want to know. So I tell them how I'm going to grade it as best I can, and then I give them a picture of the rubric, which I believe is next. So let's pause here for some questions and then assessment, and we're done. And then we can answer questions.
All right. Do you use notebooks for elementary and upper grades?
At the moment, I teach, well, I'm starting 5th grade next year. In the past, I have used them from 1st grade to 8th grade. Right now, I only teach 5th, 7th, and 8th. So,
the email address for Joanne and Kathy, it is info@comprehensibleclassroom.com. And the passwords question, we talked about that. So just go back and watch the replay when we're done. And the resources that we mentioned for learning more about passwords are from Alina Filipescu, her blog post on it, and Bryce Hedstrom's book.
Awesome.
That's it.
I know that some students feel like, and I know when I started that my older kids, my honors kids were like, we're not in kindergarten, Senora. Why are you making us glue? And I was like, because this is the textbook. End of story. Like, this is the expectation of the class. In science class, you do experiments. In PE class, you dress down and you go running. In Spanish class, you glue comprehensible resources in your notebook. End of story.
I love that. Just telling them, like, because this becomes your textbook. I mean, that just, it seems so straightforward. I mean, you can't argue with that.
So, assessment. This is how I've decided to assess the notebooks. If I didn't have to, I wouldn't. I think it's a waste of time. It doesn't help them acquire. It does hold them responsible for getting everything in their book. All right, I guess that's important. Because I've said it's important. What I do is I assess them on a rubric. It's a very simple rubric. I literally tape it to the front of the notebook. And it's, is their index updated? Did they write the dates down? Is it relatively organized? It's 10 points for sort of visual organization and appearance. And that's because I need to be able to read it. That's all. The other 40 points are, did you glue the things in? And if I asked you to interact with it in some way, did you do it? The designation between notes are complete and work is complete is totally arbitrary. It's kind of an in my head thing. And it's out of 50 points. They can make anything up out of notes and work, because why not? So go ahead and go to the next one. I don't correct errors because research has shown that doesn't help them acquire. So it's just, either go ahead and go to the next one.
I was going to say, plug for our assessment, Summer Fun Club. We talked about that in the assessment session, which was the third one.
Third one. And if I grade them for completion and a little bit of organization. So if pages are blank or incomplete, I write down page 12 missing. It's very easy. And then they either take the grade or fix it. So for me, it's not worth the time and effort to keep a master notebook. Instead, I choose one student who is on the ball and I grade that one first. And that's the example, because sometimes I forget. I meant to have them glue page 47 in and I forgot. So I go to that one student who's never absent and I make sure that I really did forget. Is it perfect? No, but I'm human. It's fine. The other thing that I do for them is I keep a very simple Google Doc and I share it on my class webpage. And once a week, I sit down and I just update that Google Doc and make sure that everything is on there. Next. So this is what I do keep track of. So I don't have a class notebook, but I do keep track of what pages I grade each term, because that's important. I don't want to double grade. And any special notes about certain assignments, if I, whatever, like, we didn't finish this in class, it's okay. This was whatever, just so I don't grade them for not finishing something that I didn't assign. Because it's hard to keep track of those things. This is my grading policy. I accept missing or incomplete pages up until the hard deadline. I don't let them make up neatness and organization because it's not that important. And then somebody in class keeps extra pages if they're absent for those.
And if you want to know more about the hard deadline, you can look at the assessment session.
Or the next slide.
Oh.
A hard deadline is the last possible time and date that I can accept late work and still make my own deadlines while still honoring my own time. It's usually 2 or 3 days before grades are due. And I usually only have 4 or 5 kids who need that extra time. Most of the kids either take the grade they get or don't. So here's another tip. At the beginning of each marking period, plan out your due dates. I actually do it at the beginning of the year. So I know that my grades are due November 11th. I want my hard deadline to be November 5th because I'm going to be out of town on the 7th and 8th. So it's got to be a little earlier, which means I'm going to collect my notebooks a good 10 days before that. So they have a long time to fix it. So that when a parent emails me and says, why aren't you accepting my kids' late work? Well, they had 10 days plus all of the days from the day I assigned it to do that. And so right now we're just going to go with it, and failure is an opportunity to learn. Thank you. So it's only happened twice in 4 years. One of them, the kid's mom, like he had it in a backpack. He got a new backpack and his mom gave the old backpack to Goodwill. Totally legit excuse. Another kid who lost it, his family was had uncertain documentation status, and his father ended up getting deported, as did his brother. You know what? He lost his notebook. It's okay. It's not the end of the world, right? I deal with it on an individual basis. I have a conversation with the kid. Have they been doing their work? Have they been keeping up in class? Have they been honest about it? And I talk about that with the kids. Like, if you lose your notebook, tell me. Generally, notebooks are always found. Twice they haven't been. It's going to be okay. It's not a major emergency. And then they treat it really well. So this is what kids have said about the notebooks. No, you can't keep it over the summer. I might need it. Actually happened. Another kid, I'm terrified of losing my quaderno. Like, it keeps me up at night because they know what a big deal it is. It's the most important thing we have in class. And a former student came back to me last year and she said, Senora, I take my notebook to class every day in high school. She jumped from Spanish 1 to Spanish 3, which is the power of Somos. And
power of CI.
The power of CI, thank you. The power of CI with the structure of Somos that has allowed me to become a good teacher. So I'm glad that somebody mentioned that it gives you the encouragement to try them again. And let's go back and do a couple.
Someone asked if they notebook on the first day. You said the second day, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's usually because by the time they get to me, they're like, do we get notebooks this year? When are we getting our notebooks? And I'm like, well, I was going to wait, but sure, let's go ahead and get them started. And I'll do like one section a day. Where do I keep them? I have the students take them home in my 7th and 8th grade classes. In our 6th grade class, our 6th grade teacher actually keeps them in the classroom because they are transitioning into more middle school responsibilities. I'm not sure I would do that in 6th grade. And somebody asked about 5th grade. I don't know. I haven't started 5th grade yet. I start in a couple weeks. So we'll see. When I did it in 1st and 2nd grade, I absolutely kept their notebooks with me. What do I do with thicker packets? So with like a woolly packet, I actually look ahead and I plan what it is that I want to print and have them glue in. I don't use when I use woolly, which I don't use a lot of, I just got it last year, I don't print everything and I don't want them to do all the activities because all the activities are not worth the same amount in my eyes or not going to be great for every kid. So I pick and choose and I might have them do, I might print 3 pages and have them glue those in.
If they structure their grade book as in the assessment video where they have reading, listening, writing, maybe speaking, where does this grade go?
Other. So for me, other is called language participation. And it's worth as little as I can get away with it. And so that's like assignments, work, whatever you want to call that. I think you called it work habits. Am I right?
Yeah, sometimes citizenship, sometimes work habits. I went back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big thing is, like, if you have decided that, like us, you have structured your grade book so that it is showing what students can do in the language, having this grade go into the work habits or the citizenship category or whatever, it's not going to affect their grade a lot, but it's going to give you a record. And it's going to give you something, for me, it was at student-led conferences, it gave me something I could talk to parents about, like, oh my gosh, why does my kid have, why are they not doing so great in this class? And we can look at the work habits and say, well, your kid's not doing the work. And in this class, that's not directly affecting their grade that much. But what it means is that when they're not participating in the activities, they're not getting that input. They're not processing it, and so they're not moving forward in their proficiency.
Yes, exactly. It's a very tangible piece. And somebody said earlier that they really like having the objectives so that parents and kids and admins can see them in the notebook. Yes, it's also one of the reasons why I put the rubrics on all of my quizzes so that parents sign the rubric. So if they really want to read it, they can. And if they want to talk about it, I will absolutely have a conversation about the rubric. It's just like transparency for me.
Someone said that they tried there for the first time and 5 students lost them. I think that parents and admins would want to take them home. I teach high school. Is there a way they can fill a new one? And I'm going to speak not from experience, but just from what I would say. I feel like it wouldn't be worth my time or their time or the paper to go back and recreate one just for the sake of doing it. I think I would probably spend my time trying to convince my parents and admins that they can just keep it in class if you have kids that are continually having that problem. What would you say, Elicia?
Absolutely. So there's some kids whose notebooks never go home. that's okay. They go in their locker. If I know a kid, I've definitely had kids who are like, can I keep it in here? And I'm like, absolutely. You know, for special reasons, maybe they know themselves, maybe they have a support plan. How I have them fill in a new one, I do buy extras. I give them a new Sharpie. I have them put their name on it. I say, okay, you lost your notebook on this date. It looks like, and you've been doing a great job with collecting all of the pages that I've been handing out with this paper clip that I've given you, and glue in from the day you lost it. And that's fine. Like, it's not a big deal. I'll have you grade it. I'll grade it from here forward. And thank you for being honest and showing integrity. After they've already glued things in and I use it for input, just students go back and look at previous work. Yes, that's always an option. So if they want more input, or I might say, who remembers what happened to Johnny when he went to France? And, use it and go back to do something else with that story. So it just kind of depends, especially if songs come up. If we're doing a Conta Ninja or I'm just playing a song, often they'll go back and like follow along with the lyrics. So,
yeah, that's great. That's great to have those songs in there. So as someone said that they, she or he, I don't know who commented it, but welcomes them to take a picture with their phone or with a Chromebook if they want to study it at home. So that might be something to talk to with parents or admin. And just touching on some of the things that Elicia said, it made me think about our mindset shift about managing expectations, not behaviors. And so I think that as teachers, we really like to try to force our students to become the kinds of humans and develop the kind of habits that we want them to develop. And so maybe we think that, if they've lost their notebook, if we make them go back and do all the work to put it back together, then they're going to really learn their lesson and it's going to really benefit them in life. And there may totally be some truth in that. But I think it's worth it to, anytime that you have a thought like that, like think through, well, what are the actual tangible repercussions of them not having the beginning parts of the notebook? What lessons are they really learning or not learning? And how can I adapt to keep our relationship moving forward and not sacrificing, the fact that there are real consequences for our actions in life. So it's like finding a balance between like what's a logical consequence for this and what's maybe over the top.
And I think for me, that relationship piece is something that I really didn't understand when I first started teaching, because I thought I had to make them understand and hold them accountable for and I still believe that students need to be held accountable as is appropriate, but I don't want that holding them accountable to get in the way of the relationship of me being a reasonable, strict, like I'm super strict, no question, but reasonable and approachable human being. That's important to me, that they see me as a person, not a monster. That doesn't mean I'm their friend. Mm-hmm. It does mean that I acknowledge that they are human and fragile and mess up, and it's okay, and I forgive them. And I tell them that a lot. I say things like, I forgive you. You messed up. I forgive you. It's okay. I do it all the time. Let's move on. Mm-hmm. And that for me has been one of the biggest shifts in my teaching, aside from embracing input-driven methodologies. That's the piece.
Someone asked if a student's absent, missed a page, are there sample or model notebooks? And I think that would just go back to you would have them look from a student who is on it.
Mm-hmm. And I do have a list of pages and their titles on a shared Google Doc that kids can access, that's linked from my class webpage. Would spirals work? Yeah, I think spirals, if that's what you got, use them. Sure. Would I use them? Or I might not, because they're really hard to stack. But sure, of course, use what you have.
Someone said putting duct tape over the spiral part. That's handy.
Awesome. That's a really good idea. Are
right.
there other questions?
We are past an hour, so we'll maybe if something pops up right now, but we'll work on wrapping it up. And yeah, I think this
Oh,
was helpful.
I see one more question about how I number the students. I put their names in alphabetical order, and I call it 1 through whatever. And then if a kid comes in that isn't at the beginning or the end of the alphabet, they get a 0.5.
So Alicia, someone told me this yesterday, talking about something else. The developer I'm working with Garbanzo. He said, you could, instead of numbering things 1 through 10, you could number 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And then when you have to slip in a new lesson or whatever, then you don't have to like change your whole numeration. You can just flip, you have like 10 extra spaces. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
For your students, you can
totally,
10, 20.
Totally brilliant. I have named my upper level classes like, how in Spanish, like 60 and 70 are hard numbers.
Yeah.
So I've given them those numbers just so that they hear them. But sometimes it's just a little easier for me to do 1 through whatever, because then it's just faster.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Would this work in high school? So I've never taught high school. I would absolutely do this in high school and have every expectation that it will work. I kind of do it with my graduate class. It doesn't look exactly the same way, but I do have them create their own textbook with articles. It looks a little different at the grad level, but absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think most of the questions that are coming up now are questions that we've already answered. And so we recommend just going back and catching the replay. But we're so happy that you joined it with us today. And Elicia, I think this is going to really help people get an idea if they're looking for an organization system. We might need to formalize some things at some point and have like a download that our Somos users could get, because I think we're going to have some big interactive-ish fans after this.
Awesome. So if other questions come up, leave them in the comments. We'll keep checking, and have a great rest of your summer. For those of you that are already back, good job.
Yes. And next week we are going to be talking about classroom management. And I'm so excited. We have a special guest that's going to be joining us. She's going to be putting a post up on my blog this week as kind of a preview. So you can be looking for that. And then it's a really different twist on classroom management. And I'm really excited for you guys to learn with her. So.
Yay. All right. We're out of here. Have a great week. Bye.